Well, first of all, yes, thank you all for being here today. You know, it's very important, obviously, with media and the press, and to report the news. And report the news of what's going on here, not only in the Missouri State Capitol, but down at the Secretary of State's office, the Kirkpatrick building, and everything else. So a lot of people have asked me what it's been like to be Secretary of State for a whole 7 days, 7 days. And I would say it's been overwhelming, exciting, and very humbling all at once. So I take it very seriously, the responsibility that the voters have entrusted in me in order to make sure that Missouri continues to be a great place to live and work as well. So I wanted to introduce my communications director. This is Rachel. So Rachel's communications director. We're getting ready to do some very exciting things in the communication realms with some different podcasts that we're going to be putting out, as well as trying to do a little bit better job of keeping up on social media and telling a lot of the great things that Missouri does in the Secretary of State's office. So I've learned that not all Secretary of State's offices are the same. Some of them just concentrate on elections. In some states, I believe the state of Utah, the lieutenant governor actually handles their elections. The state of Florida, the governor appoints the Secretary of State. And even in other states, sometimes the legislature elects the Secretary of State. So we do a lot of good things down there. So kind of the 5 big things that we focus on is number 1, elections. And this is something that I talked about a lot on the campaign trails, election integrity. The second thing is securities. I think Missouri is only one of maybe 8 or 9 states that actually get to appoint a securities commissioner. I appointed Representative O'Donnell last week, or 2 weeks ago. All the day structure kind of run the same, but he's going to be an excellent addition. He has experience as a bond trader, as well as experience here in the Capitol. So very, very excited to have him on board in securities. We also have the state library. Janet Carruthers, who is the acting state librarian, is now the official state librarian. So very excited to have her on board. Business services. So any of you that have a small business or an LLC or a corporate partnership and things like that, we do a lot of that as well. And then our state archives. John Dogan is doing an excellent job down there. He's going to continue to be the state archivist and holder of records. Now, when I was out on the campaign trail and I talked about many of the things the Secretary of State does, on day 1 I learned that we get sued a lot. And so we have some active lawsuits going through. I'm not going to talk about any active lawsuits, but we get sued a lot. And then number 2, we get cyber attacked a lot as well. Obviously, holding all those state records and official records for companies and corporations, as well as voter rolls, there is somebody every day that's trying to hack into our system. And so, fortunately, we have a good IT staff. My IT director, Chief Information Officer, did retire, I think, after 35 years at the end of December, so we're currently looking to replace him. But we have named Paul. He's the interim Chief Information Officer, and so I think we're well taken care of. I think we're going to have some comments and then have some time for questions at the end. Yes. So one of the things that I'm very excited about, and that I promised voters, is focus on election integrity. And so I was able to hire a director of election integrity. Now, the director of election integrity, I want to get a county clerk. And so Nick Lestrada, who is the former Pettis County clerk, is our new director of election integrity. And one of the focuses we want to focus on is auditing the voter rolls. We've seen in other states when they've audited voter rolls, they've had deceased members, they've had people that live out of state, especially on the border states. You know, Missouri, Kansas City, obviously we have a lot of people that commute back and forth between Kansas and Missouri, and then on the other side of the state, we have a lot of people that commute back and forth between St. Louis and Illinois. So we want to make sure that only Missouri residents obviously vote in Missouri elections. And then with the huge passage of Amendment 7, which changed the Constitution to say only citizens can vote here in the state of Missouri, I consider that a mandate on myself as well as the legislature to make sure that only citizens do vote here in the state of Missouri. So right now we're looking at what Arizona did as far as requiring proof of citizenship to vote in their state. I know it's kind of tied up in some litigation, so we're the show me state. We're looking at other states to see exactly how that language should be worded. Wyoming just passed a bill out of their state house. I've been working and visiting with Secretary Gray in Wyoming about what they're doing as far as making sure that you require proof of citizenship, whether that's a passport or birth certificate, in order to register to vote. So we're looking at some of those things. And then, right now, in the Secretary of State's office, we have about 230 employees. We have about a $71 million budget. So Secretary Ashcroft has proposed a budget, and that's the budget that we'll be going with. I think it just has a couple of NDIs, new decision items, that are very minor. I think $20,000, a couple of them. So those, nothing big or significant in as far as that new decision item. But we're still working on that, obviously. Trying to think. Well, one of the other things that I'm very passionate about is not only fulfilling the promises that I made to voters and campaign promises, but also looking at ways that we can become more efficient and effective in the Secretary of State's office. And so we will be launching kind of a Doge initiative to look at all the processes and procedures that are in the Secretary of State's office, see if there's anything that's duplicated. Can we eliminate certain processes and procedures and still be the most efficient and effective Secretary of State's office ever? I think according to the Heritage Foundation, last time I checked, I believe we were ranked 11th as far as election integrity, and there's some things that we're going to be able to work on. We got 0 out of 3 points, like I said, for allowing, or the opportunity to allow actually having non-citizens vote here in the state of Missouri. So we're going to look and see how we can get 3 out of 3 points on that. But I'm very excited to be the next Missouri Secretary of State. Very excited about the team that I put together. I think I put together a wonderful team. I think Secretary Ashcroft did a good job. You'll never hear me criticize the Secretary Ashcroft. I think he had his leadership style. I have a different leadership style. Not that one way's right or one way's wrong. We just have different ways of doing things. Similar to, if I took a poll in here, you all have different ways of reporting and different styles and different ways to report the news and what you consider important. So with that, what do we have? Time for questions?
We have time.
All right, I'll tell you one story. So it's kind of a funny story before we start our questions. We had Senator Pierce was my former state senator, and so we went to I think we were delivering a legislative update at Rotary one day, and so he gets up and delivers his speech and talks about what's going on in the Senate. I get up and deliver my what's going on in the legislature, and I put up a number, and I said, hey, if you got any complaints or anything, call this number. And then I had a different number if you had wanted to congratulate me or tell me what great job I was doing. Now, Senator Pierce didn't know it at the time, but the complaint number was his state senator. So I'm not going to do that to you today, okay? Because ultimately the buck stops here. And I told my staff that this morning. Ultimately, when my employees are successful, then my directors are successful. When my directors are successful, then I'll be successful. And so, but ultimately, everything stops. The buck stops with me. And so it's a humongous responsibility that voters have placed on me, but it's one that I'm excited to take on. So, question? Yes, back here.
I'm Echo Menges from the Edina Sentinel. Your predecessor, Jay Ashcroft, I'm coming from one of the most rural regions of the state, the northeast corner.
Okay.
So we're talking Schuyler, Scotland, Clark, Adair, Knox, Lewis, that kind of 9-county block, Shelby, Marion,
right.
Macon. The only state level representative we saw on a regular basis, yearly, sometimes twice a year, was Ashcroft. He would come visit every single county. I know that you have a different, you say you have a different style, but is that something that you plan to continue, is to have a presence throughout the state, even in the most rural communities?
Most certainly. I think Secretary Ashcroft did a great job, and he always bragged that he visited every county at least once a year during his tenure. And that is something that I plan on continuing to do as well. I think it's very important to get out amongst the people and not just be in a box here in Jefferson City. So most certainly, I plan on being out and visiting all corners of the state, not just the big cities.
One more.
Yes.
Do you, can you just talk about your thoughts, the value of local newspapers in our smaller communities? It's a little different. I feel like it's a little bit different than some of the bigger, larger, more populated areas. Like, do you have thoughts on the importance of that, the importance of supporting that, and any way you plan to do that in the future?
Yeah, so when I started off, what you all do is very important, and so small newspapers are very important as well. I subscribe to my small local newspaper in Warrenburg, the Daily Star Journal, and so yes, anything that I can help out, and I know we visited on some issues. I think Doug and I have visited on some issues before about posting the what's going to be on the ballot in local papers and things like that. That's something that I would continue to support. I think our all newspapers, and especially in our smaller towns, the local ones. I mean, that's where we get the news. That's where we find out about community events. And so I think they're vitally important, and I want to continue to support them however I can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Sure.
So my question is about records retention.
Yes.
And that falls in your
It does.
category. So municipalities generally have meeting packets during their meeting. The meeting packets that are portions of the meeting packet discussed in open session are all open record. How long are the municipalities required to keep those records of what they discussed?
That's a good question. I don't want to give you the wrong answer, but I know if I put my certified public accountant hat on, most of the time we are required to keep those records at least 7 years for IRS tax purposes. And so I can find out the answer to that. And the job Doug does an excellent job of keeping those records. I will tell you that you all are invited anytime that you want to come down and take a tour of the Secretary of State's office. I can take you back into archives. I can take you, we literally have a warehouse here and then a warehouse that I've not visited yet out on the west side of town that literally has corporate records, every sort of record that you could want. And so I think our policy is more than 7 years, or else we would not have all these warehouses full of information. But I don't know what our official policy is, but that's something that we can find out. Rachel can help you find that out and get back to you.
So, and I wanted to make sure that you understand, like, the meeting packets during the meeting, not just the minutes, but the things that they, like, correspondence, between entities, any kind of bids that were discussed, not just what was.
Yeah, my understanding is we keep all that information. Now, what format that is, if it's an electronic format or actually paper format, I don't know. I have visited the archives twice now in the last, I think, week, but we can find out that information for you. Yeah, just give your contact information to Rachel.
Denny,
Yeah.
on that, what, in the situation that Rock is dealing with, a
Yeah.
lot of us have noticed in recent years that a lot of these cities aren't always following some of these regulations that are set out for them on things like record retention, meeting notice, different issues. Coming from your office, is it important to you that we kind of get back to a world where these local entities operate as they're supposed to?
Yes, yeah, most certainly. Yeah, no, I agree. We want to be not only transparent in the Secretary of State's office, but it's important that other governmental entities are very transparent as well. Whether that deals with sunshine requests, I don't know what I haven't been sunshine yet, but I would say that I'm sure some of you may be preparing one as we speak. So, yes, they should be retaining those records. And in what format? I mean, obviously, it's a lot easier if it's an electronic format because then you can do digital searches and things like that. But let me look and see what our policy is. But yes, if there's any way that the Secretary of State's office can be helpful or provide guidance to those local municipalities, we're more than happy to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, so on the campaign trail, there was the big promise to do hand counting.
Yes.
Paper ballots.
I was wondering who's going to ask the first question.
What does that look like legislatively? Have you spoken with lawmakers, and is there a path forward?
Yeah, so, basically, do I believe in hand counting? Yes, most certainly I do. The only people that can mandate hand counting is the state legislature or our county clerks. And so I said that, hey, when I spoke to the county clerks, I said, any of you that want to do hand counting not followed any, I don't know of any bills yet, and maybe you may know of, but I didn't have checked into that to see if anyone has filed those Kane County bills. I know that's not part of the election integrity package. Last year I filed those bills and we didn't have a hearing on it, but I know it's a new leadership, a new committee chairmanship, so most certainly it's something that I'd like to visit with them about. In light of doing that, right now there's a requirement of hand count audit after the election, 5% of after the election. And so what I would like to do is see that increase. If we could increase that to 10% or 15%, I would think that that would help provide voters more confidence in the elections. And so right now, do I support hand counting ballots? Yes, most certainly I do. Is that going to go through the legislature? If the last couple of years are any indication, it would have a very uphill battle, but it will be continue something that I support.
Quick follow on
Yes.
that, which counties have indicated that they want to do hand counting of ballots?
None. None so far. Now, Osage County, they did, I believe it was April of 2023, they had a municipal election that they did hand count ballots, and from all accounts, it's been very successful. My own home county of Johnson County, we had a special, I think, sewer bond election in August of 2023, and they had printed off paper ballots and hand counted those, and it was very successful and easy. And so, right now, I think the county clerks have a lot of stress on them. And we've seen a huge turnover in county clerks as far as them resigning or not running again for re-election. And so one of the promises that I made our county clerks that I would up the amount of training and educational opportunities for them. That's one of the reasons that I hired on our Director of Election Integrity, Nicholas Stroud, because he's been down in the weeds. He's ran elections for 14 years. He knows the pitfalls. He knows the worries of some of the other county clerks. And so it's something that right now they're focused on kind of auditing voter rolls and how we can best do that. But with, like I said, I'll continue to talk with the county clerks. I think, when I was going around the campaign trail, there was a lot of distrust in our elections. And, we want to make sure that when people think about Missouri elections, they think, hey, these are the most safest and secure elections in the United States.
I do want to ask briefly, when Attorney General Andrew Bailey defended you in the Loudermill lawsuit, he said it was to clear up the jurisdictional issues in Kansas. Now that that lawsuit is in Missouri, why should the Attorney General be defending you in that lawsuit?
Well, I'll defer to Attorney General Bailey. I said I wasn't going to comment on any pending lawsuits as far as Secretary of State's office, and I'm not going to comment on any pending lawsuit either. But I appreciate Attorney General Bailey what he's been doing.
We talked about citizenship. What's the current, what do you need now to be registered? Do you bring a passport?
No, not right now. You just check a box that says you're a U.S. citizen. And so with the overwhelming passage of Amendment 7, I think that sent a mandate, not only to me as the Secretary of State, but to the legislature that, hey, there should be a more strenuous requirement to prove that you're a citizen of the United States. Now, I've talked to some of my colleagues, Secretary LaRose in Ohio, Secretary Morales in Indiana, Secretary Schwab in Kansas. And they've talked about, in some instances, they've had non-citizens register to vote. However, there was no criminal intent. And so they've described instances where someone is going to get a driver's license or a work permit, and they speak very broken English and can understand only a little bit of English, and so they signed up to vote, and they didn't realize that they did. And when they did realize that they received a letter from the Secretary of State saying, hey, it appears you're a registered voter and you're a non-citizen, they immediately tried to correct that misnomer, and they had not voted in any election. So those are the people that obviously feel some compassionate about. They're here legally, they accidentally registered to vote when they were getting a driver's license, did not have any criminal intent, have not voted. But it's the other ones that we're concerned about. The ones that registered to vote are here illegally or cannot vote, even though they may be here legally, and went ahead and voted even though they knew they weren't supposed to vote.
Do you think, like photo ID, having somebody required to bring a passport or birth certificate register is going to turn into a legal fight?
I mentioned before on day one, I found out that we get sued a lot. So I'm sure that if we were to pass a rule or the legislature would pass something that said that, hey, in order to register to vote or to vote, you have to provide proof of citizenship, whether that's a passport or a birth certificate. I'm sure that would be challenged in court. But I feel good about where we are in the Missouri Constitution, especially with the passage of Amendment 7. You know, we have to figure out how to enforce Amendment 7. So I think that's the big question now, is how do we enforce Amendment 7 to ensure that only citizens are voting in the state of Missouri?
Regarding the Securities Commissioner.
Yes.
With your appointment of Representative O'Donnell, why opt for someone who had previous industry experience versus maybe someone who had previous enforcement experience? And are you at all, how would you address any concerns even about the appearance that kind of a fox guarding the hen house, or maybe he has more like friendly ties with the industry? You know?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think O'Donnell is going to do a great job. He knows the lingo. I mean, he was a bond trader for many years. He's currently wasn't working for a securities or a financial advising firm. And so he knows the lingo, he understands the industry. We also have a director of enforcement in that securities division, and we have a general counsel. Now, one thing I did find out is we have eight open positions that are allotted for attorneys within securities, within elections, and within general counsel. When I came on board, we had one half-time attorney. And so we were trying to staff that up. We have a few candidates that we're looking at for that director of enforcement position. That is usually an attorney, and then obviously the general counsel is usually an attorney. But I think, when looking at O'Donnell, just the way he deals with people and works with people, not only is he going to be managing a staff of, I forget how many are in that securities division, 15 to 20. The way he's able to do that, he was chair of the Financial Services Committee, Banking Committee over in the House. He has industry experience. He can talk the lingo. He knows, as a financial advisor, what's right and what's wrong, because he was, selling those securities and offering that financial advice to, Missourians, many of them elderly and senior citizens. So I have no worries about him having any conflicts of interest there. What I am worried about is getting a director of enforcement and a general counsel hired over there. And so we're working through that, and I know O'Donnell's going to do a great job, and we're trying to put that legal team around him to make sure that he's successful.
Speaking of investment,
Yes.
Previous Secretary of State had some rules that were struck down
Yes.
on how what information has to be given to investors regarding the ESG issues. Have you explored? Do you intend to try to bring back those kind of rules again? Is there a way to draft them that you can get them through?
We're looking at that, obviously, that was under the prior administration, but the Secretary of State's law office, I believe, lost on, for income accounts, all 4 accounts of that. And so we're looking at that. Now, one of the things on the campaign trail I did say is, hey, ESG, if you want to invest in an ESG mutual fund or company, that's on you. If you invest $1,000 and you really don't care if it makes money or not, then hey, that's fine. I mean, you should be able to invest in ESG if you want to. But you also should be notified if that is the main goal or main purpose of that fund or that security. And so that should be highlighted in bold-faced letters and say, hey, the main purpose of this is not a maximum return to the shareholder. The main purpose of this fund is to invest in environmental social governance principles. And that may or may not make you money, that's up to you. So we're looking at that. I believe that there's a rule that expires at or a comment period that expires at the end of this month. And so we're looking at all, my general counsel's been on the job, I think 7 or 8 days. And so I did hire Clifton Davis over from the Attorney General's office. He's a stellar attorney. We've got some help coming on with him, Ryan Hart, who was in the Department, I believe, of Social Services as their general counsel or deputy general counsel. So I know that they are actively looking at all those cases and to see which ones we may try and settle, which ones we should definitely go to court with, or which ones we may decide to drop.
So why should the Secretary of State's office be making a value judgment on whether or not a particular investing strategy should be alerted to investors, whereas other investing strategies that may also not have absolute return as their number one goal aren't alerted to them?
Well,
why wade in there?
Well, I think it's important that we protect taxpayers here in the state of Missouri. And so we're not saying, like I said, we're not saying that you can't invest in a fund that doesn't try to maximize shareholder return, but you need to be notified that that is the primary purpose of that fund or that different security. So we're not saying, like I said, we're not eliminating any of those continue. But what we've seen and what I've been told in the industry is many of the big players that had ESG funds, their shareholders are getting out of those funds. And not maybe because that they disagree with ESG, but the funds aren't making them any money. And so they're losing money on these funds. So as a shareholder, I don't know about you all, but I think, pretty common sense for retirement, I'm putting money away in an IRA. And I would like for that IRA to grow, and so I'm actually able to retire. Now, if I want to invest in an a fund that's main purpose is ESG, that's fine, but I'm doing so knowing that, hey, it may take me a lot longer to retire if I only invest in funds that sole purpose is not returning shareholder value.
Right.
Yep.
I guess the question was,
Yep.
why that particular thing and not every other thing that might involve less
Well,
of a return?
I think a lot of those things, if you look at any of the prospectuses or syllabuses for many of those funds, that is the main purpose of those. And so, if there are others that we need to be made aware of, whose main purpose is not maximizing shareholder wealth or value to the shareholder, then we need to take a look at those as well. But I know ESG has been probably the biggest one as far as investors go, where, hey, I thought I was getting a maximum return on my investment, but it turns out that they really didn't care about maximizing return. They just wanted to invest in ESG companies, even if they were losing money.
Secretary Hoskins,
Yeah.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for your time with us today. And lucky for us, our next speaker is here right now. So if you want to come on down, and I'll introduce Lieutenant Governor David Wasinger. David Wasinger is Missouri's 49th Lieutenant Governor, elected in 2024. He ran on a promise of challenging the Jefferson City establishment by reducing inefficiency, holding government accountable, and creating opportunities for the state's future generations. Himself, a lifelong Missourian, he was raised in Hannibal. As a kid, he delivered newspapers. So he later went on to earn his accounting degree from the University of Missouri Columbia, CPA certification, a law degree from Vanderbilt University. As an attorney, he took on Wall Street and secured $18 billion in settlements following the 2008 financial crisis. His public service includes roles on the board of directors for the Boy Scouts of Greater St. Louis, University of Missouri Board of Curators. He lives in St. Louis with his wife, Colleen, and together they have 2 sons. Please join me welcoming Lieutenant Governor David Hoskins.
Very kind introduction, so thank you very much. I was walking the halls of the Capitol with Governor Kehoe. Where's Mark Mawson? So Mark was walking the halls along with me. Governor Kehoe, now Governor Kehoe, introduced me, and Mark flagged me down. We visited for a couple of minutes, and Mark pointed out that the Missouri Press Association was going to have today, was going to be their big day. He had asked me if I had any interest in coming and speaking, and I said, absolutely. What I told my staff is, this meeting is in blue ink. It's not in pencil, this is in blue ink. I'm actually supposed to be presiding over the state senate as we're speaking. I just left this. So thank you very much, Mark, for flagging that. This is a very important meeting to me for a number of reasons. Because you are where the rubber meets the road. We want to get our message out. Before I leave here today, I'd like you to get our policy and communications contact is Chris Walker. Our chief of staff is Katie Ashcroft. We want to get our message for change out to the residents of the state of Missouri and citizens of the state of Missouri. So I cannot thank you enough, Mark, for this kind invitation. Mark, if it's okay with you, what I'd like to do is, I'm new to politics, I'm new to these folks. Would it be okay with you if I kind of provide an introduction about my background?
Of course.
Said what our priorities, would that be all right?
Yes.
So let me tell you a little bit. I'm an outsider. I literally had to get on Google Maps still this morning in order to find the state capitol. I swear to God, I was on Google Maps to get my rental to get back to the capitol. I am brand new to the state capitol. I ran as a conservative outsider to shake things up in Jefferson City, and I fully intend on shaking things up in Jefferson City. I'm a native of Hannibal, Missouri. So I was born and raised in Hannibal, and one of the reasons why it's so important is you, the press, have affected my life both personally and professionally. My first job was carrying the Hannibal Courier Post. So my first job was in print media, or print journalism. So this Hannibal Courier Post, I carried that. My parents did not believe in what's child labor laws. So I started carrying this paper when I was probably 8 or 9 years old. And they would have a stack of papers. They would just throw them on the corner on St. Mary's Avenue. It'd be about this high. We'd have to cut the band, unband the papers. We would then roll them up like this, put a rubber band around. I bet you I can beat any of you guys in a contest in terms of rolling up the Hannibal Courier Post. And then we would get a satchel with these rolled up newspapers, and I would walk these streets of Hannibal. I'd be on the sidewalk throwing papers on folks' porch. I mean, that is the, honestly, God, that's the first job I had, was delivering the Hannibal Courier Post. But it was also my first impression of how important the media is to Missouri residents. In addition to delivering the Hannibal Courier Post, I had to go collect the money for them to pay their subscription to the Hannibal Courier Post. So every month, I would go knock on doors, and whoever it was, Mrs. Smith, I'm here with Dave Wasinger, I'm here to collect. And these folks, frankly, a lot of them didn't have a lot of money. They would sometimes, it was really, really cold in Hannibal. They would ask me to come inside their home, and they would get out their purse, and they would literally count out change. I would watch this, count out change to pay for the Hannibal Courier Post. And what that should tell you and me is how important you are to Missouri residents. So these folks were looking to you for news about Hannibal, for news about the state of Missouri, for news about what's taking place in Jefferson City, Missouri, and what's taking place in our country. So I literally have a personal connection to the media, and that's why I value this invitation, Mark, so much, because I know how important you are to people in Hannibal, Missouri, and rural Missouri, and I'm now in St. Louis, and we still subscribe to the print edition of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. So we, I don't know, is Kurt Everson here? All right, Kurt, we're going to pay your salary. So again, it's just, I can't tell you. So I migrated from delivering papers for the Hannibal Courier Post to the Hardee's restaurant. If you've been to Hannibal, you drive down 61. That Hardee's has not changed in 20 years, or 20 to 30 years. I went in there the other day, and it has not changed. I flipped burgers and made French fries for more summer than I like to admit in Hannibal. Even worked there. I went to the university, graduated from Hannibal High School, went on to the University of Missouri, graduated with a degree in accounting. I passed the CPA exam. I then went on to Vanderbilt University to graduate with a law degree. And then I met some lovely young lady named Colleen Wasinger, who's also now Colleen Wasinger, who's also a lifelong Missourian, and she's a girl from St. Louis, so guess where we're living? We're living in St. Louis, Missouri. We just celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary. And the most important thing is we have two beautiful young sons, and frankly, we're concerned about the direction of the state and the country as to what they're going to inherit, and that's why we ran for Missouri Lieutenant Governor. Hold on one second, I gotta get my water. My day job prior to this lieutenant governor job, I, for several years, have owned and managed a law firm in Brentwood, Missouri. Probably the most significant claim to fame on our law firm, when the financial crisis took place, I had contact, you can read about this. I ended up, I was very, very upset when the folks in Hannibal, probably people in this room, they lost their homes to foreclosure. You probably have friends, relatives, I know I do, that were losing their homes to foreclosure following the 2008-2009 financial crisis. And our guys in Washington, D.C., they ended up bailing out the Wall Street banks, and it did not help a damn person from the state of Missouri. Instead, we bailed out the Wall Street banks, and I'm still upset about it. And I've always been an advocation to fight for the folks on Main Street and for your family members, the residents of the state of Missouri, rather than the folks on Wall Street. So I ended up filing a lawsuit. Never been to New York City other than when I was a little kid. Filed a lawsuit against Bank of America, which was the largest mortgage lender in the country. And it got a lot of media attention. So this is professionally how folks in this room helped me. You've heard my personal story. Professionally, you've also helped me. And this is why you are important to holding the lobbyists, the special interests, accountable. There's a fella, after I filed this suit, he's sitting in a recliner, literally on Thanksgiving Day, watching the Detroit Lions play, his favorite team. He lives in Louisiana. He reads a story about me, taking on these, this guy's a little bit crazy, but you know what? I think I want him to represent me. He drives up from Louisiana, and because he had read the news story that one of your colleagues had written, would not have known me, would not have been aware of this, and I would not have had him as a client, would have not been one of your colleagues writing a story that he was reading about on a recliner in Louisiana. He comes up to my office. I like the guy. I'm getting inundated with requests to represent him. End up representing him. We end up suing J.P. Morgan Chase. End up being one of the largest lawsuits in the history of the United States. And I benefit, and I'm still friends with the person that wrote that article about me. That would not have happened if one of your colleagues had not written a story. So I've had conversations with a couple of you. It is absolutely essential that if you can work with us to hold these lobbyists and special interests accountable, we would like to work hand in glove with everyone in this room, because I have experience with that. That Wall Street bank would not have been held accountable had it not been for one of your colleagues. So it's absolutely crucial and essential what you're doing for a living, and you're informed. If you be polite to our staff, we'll be polite to you. We'd love to work with you. So let me tell you what, that's kind of the background. Kind of give you probably this guy's a little crazy for doing this, and we ended up, I told you, I ran for lieutenant governor, no experience. I'm still using Google Maps to find this place, but I just didn't like the direction of the state and the country. And you know what, I think our boys are going to be inheriting. So I'm a big supporter of Donald Trump. All right, I'm an outsider just like Donald Trump. He came into Washington, D.C. to shake things up. I've come into Jefferson City to shake things up. So we had a conversation, our staff did, and we had a call with the White House yesterday. We intend on working with the Trump administration to address a number of common themes. And we will be a warrior for the Trump administration in the Lieutenant Governor's office. Yesterday, some of you may have seen, I authored, along with Attorney General Andrew Bailey, State Treasurer of Newegg Valley, U.S. Senator Eric Schmidt, a letter addressed to the Missouri Supreme Court asking them to do with the DEI continuing legal education requirement. The Trump administration just asked that DEI be eliminated in all state agencies. That's a good example that just happened within the last 24 hours that we're going to work hand in glove with the Trump administration in terms of addressing DEI. Probably the A1 priority that I ran on, that a number of the other statewide candidates ran on, is illegal immigration. We had a conversation yesterday with the White House. To the extent I can use the Lieutenant Governor's office as either a bully pulpit or provide any assistance to address this out-of-control illegal immigration in the state of Missouri, we will work with President Trump, his administration, we'll work with any executive, we will assist with any legislation to address this illegal immigration issue. So that is also going to be a huge issue for us. And again, we would like to work to the extent we can, to the extent we're working on these efforts. The people of Missouri spoke. I won the general election on that theme by close to 20 points. So your readers who voted for me want change. They want us to address this illegal immigration. So we'd be delighted if we begin addressing these issues to the extent we can communicate that to your list or to your readers. That would be very helpful. And again, that's another example. I ran to take things up in Jefferson City. I'm a lawyer. A lot of people think they're going to get crossways that, you don't want to write a letter to the Missouri Supreme Court when you're a lawyer, and, some lawyer, some guy finally had the courage, to raise that issue. The other priorities are, in addition to working with President Trump, is we want to fight for our great veterans. We think they've been left behind. I met with Archbishop Rosansky, who's with the Archdiocese of St. Louis yesterday. We intend on working with Catholic Charities in terms of addressing the homelessness issue for the veterans. I think they're establishing a home in Troy, Missouri right now. So we're going to work very closely with them and anyone else that wants to help with our great veterans. An issue there, I heard, who's from Northeast Missouri? I'll tell you what, you're my backyard, so I will be in Northeast Missouri, I promise you. What paper are you in?
The Edina Sentinel.
All right, perfect.
We have 7 up there, so we have now, because we're independently owned, probably maybe the only ones in the room here, but by a person, 2 people who live in Northeast Missouri. So it's the Schuyler County Times, the Memphis Democrat, the Media in Cahokia, the Edina Sentinel, the Milan Standard, the Palmyra Spectator, and the Shelby County Herald, all in that kind of northeast rural hunk. I think we should.
My brother still lives in Hannibal, so can you make sure Chris Walker gets your contact information? We'll be up to visit. And the other thing, the other piece of the lieutenant is tourism. Missouri is a beautiful state. I think if you look in Texas or Florida, they get a lot of attention. Their climate, I think our climate is better. We have 4 seasons. The summers in Florida are miserable. If you travel the state of Missouri in the fall, my roommate from Mizzou, I lives in Florida, he comes up to Missouri in the fall because it's so hot down there. You look at the beautiful leaves if you're in the Ozarks. If you go up to Hannibal, it's great trout fishing. The rivers are fantastic. So are there a lot of rural newspapers here? What I will do is we're going to advocate for tourism in Missouri, and the extent you can help us, if we come visit, Palmyra, Missouri, up in Northeast Missouri, or wherever your locale is, we'd love to get your contact information, and again, use this office as a platform to get the message out that Missouri is a great place to visit and tour. Another aspect of the Lieutenant Governor's office is Buy Missouri. We have a young lady, Anna Luttrell, who's going to be handling the Buy Missouri program. Anna is sitting right back there. You probably want to get her contact information. So what we're going to encourage Anna and others will do, there's a program that's initiated by Governor Parson. I think that is Blossom. To the extent you have any businesses, Missouri businesses in your community, we would love, we will be in contact with them. We would love to reach out to you. highlight the Buy Missouri program, highlight what's taking place in your community, to bolster that business, provide them some publicity, because we want to encourage economic development in the state of Missouri. And somebody may pick up, with the internet now, somebody may pick up on some issue, on our business that they never knew about. So that is really neat, they may bolster that Missouri business a little bit. So those are very high priorities that we'll have for the Lieutenant Governor's office. I'm open to questions, but the most important thing, if you could leave, prior to leaving, if you'd be so kind as to contact Chris Walker, Katie Astroff, or Ann Luttrell. As I said, I have had personal and professional success because of the folks in this room. And Mark, I cannot thank you enough again for inviting me. This was in blue ink that was not going to be erased, and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has. Yes, sir, Kurt.
On the Supreme Court letter that you sent yesterday, what's the time frame for that? What's the mechanism to change that? I haven't talked to the court yet, but how long is that going to take?
As I understand it, the Missouri Supreme Court could meet this afternoon and change the rule. And there are 7 Supreme Court judges, 4 of them could vote, but they could change the rule immediately. I don't know if they will. If they do not change that rule, a couple of things may happen. It's going to send a message. I think Attorney General Bailey has researched this a little more than I have. There may be some legislation that can be passed. But what I sent a message, and I've sent this to both Governor Kehoe, and we'll send this to the members. I won't go into how judges are selected in Missouri. It's a little complicated. But in my opinion, Governor Kehoe and everybody on these judicial commissions with screen judges, if a judge is unable to answer the question that they are prepared to eliminate DEI, they should not be appointed to the Missouri bench. And Governor Kehoe, in my opinion, should ask that question of every Supreme Court judge that will be coming up, which will be, I think there will be 3 of them coming up. Any judge on the Missouri Court of Appeals should be asked that question. Every circuit and associate circuit judge should be asked what their position is on DEI and this continuing legal education requirement. If I was conducting the interview, had the decision to make, that answer wasn't, they don't want to do away with it, I would not put them on the bench.
Regarding the immigration issue, what specifically are you hoping to do within your office to help President Trump with that? Or are you planning on working more closely with Governor Kehoe's administration? Just looking for a little bit more specific.
All the above, and what I'm doing today. The Lieutenant Governor's office serves as a great platform, to address whether it's President Trump taking some action. Let's assume the folks in the city of St. Louis are not enforcing, I think President Trump came out yesterday, he will end up, taking some action to prosecute them. Maybe we need to work or highlight that with Attorney General Bailey. I will tell you another thing. I know I carried your Courier Post. I'm a little new to social media too. I do. The bad combination is me in a recliner watching a Mizzou football game, scrolling through Twitter. Because my wife says you cannot do that, and you gotta delete that. So I found out my Twitter feed has gone from like 2 followers, and I have apparently a step on. I got to tweet up. So it serves as a great platform to get across whether it's President Trump's immigration issue, DEI issues. So we will be beating the drums. I think there's still, we talked to the White House yesterday. They're probably going to invite me out to the White House to begin addressing a lot of these issues and work hand in glove. We have a strong Missouri presence in the White House. I don't know if Will Sharp, who ran for Attorney General, is Secretary of the White House. John Sauer, who's a St. Louis lawyer, he's a Solicitor General. Ed Martin, which is appointed U.S. Attorney in D.C. There's Alex Meyer, who is going to be the liaison. There are several people from Missouri that are going to be working in the White House, so we will have a very, very good relationship with President Trump in the White House.
Lieutenant Governor, you ran on Amendment 3, saying that you would be pro-life as possible. Yesterday, there were hundreds and hundreds of supporters of the Amendment 3 initiative in the Capitol, going door to door, telling lawmakers to leave that amendment alone that is now in the Constitution. How do you use your office to continue to be pro-life, and is there anything you can do to continue or to repeal, or what's your thought on Amendment 3?
Right. I'm opposed to I was opposed to the passage of Amendment 3. I think the ballot language that was prepared and rewritten from Secretary Ashcroft's office, it was rewritten by the Missouri Court of Appeals in the Western District, was very misleading. Had that been written in a fair and impartial way, I don't believe Amendment 3 would have passed. I met with some state senators last week. Actually, I met with one late yesterday afternoon. My understanding is that there is legislation that probably has been filed that will migrate over to the Missouri State Senate, which I preside over, and that will be, my assumption is that will pass both the House and the Senate, and to the extent, again, I can use this office as a bully pulpit to get that amendment repealed and replaced, I will do so.
Mr. Lieutenant Governor, you talked about not being happy with the direction of the.
Can you speak up a little bit?
You talked about not being happy with the direction of the state and the country. Obviously, Missouri is run by Republicans. Are you planning to play ball with Republicans?
I do. Right. You saw the letter I wrote yesterday was co-authored by Attorney General Bailey, Treasurer Vivek Malik, and U.S. Senator Eric Schmidt. So we were working well with the Republicans on both the state, frankly, the state and the federal level. We're working well with Governor Kehoe and, frankly, the rest of the statewide office holders and the Missouri State Senators. To the extent everyone's trying to get this good conservative legislation across the finish line, much like the repeal and replacement Amendment 3, we will be working hand in glove with them, and we will work with the Republicans. If the wheels start falling off the wagon, say after spring break, call me. I have no problem calling whether it's a Republican or Democrat out. Again, as I said, and it's in large part because of folks like you. I'm fighting for the folks on Main Street, not the folks on Wall Street. And I'm fighting against these lobbyists and special interests. You know what? In part because of your colleagues and, good fortune. I am in a position where I've been, had a successful. I can't be bought and paid for by these lobbyists and special interests. I'm at a point in my career, I am doing this for the benefit of Missouri. I'm doing it for the benefit of our sons. So we're going to fight for Missouri, for your families, and not for these lobbyists and special interests, which in my mind have probably controlled Jefferson City for years. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Talk about your objections to DEI. Tell me why do you object? Why do you object to it so much?
All right. You saw yesterday President Trump eliminated all DEI from federal agencies. Did you see that?
Yes.
He came up with a very good explanation that I invite you to read. DEI is a very divisive item. I'm a firm believer, a guy from Hannibal, Missouri, talking to Missouri Press Association. I'm a firm believer in merit. All right? I am a merit-based person. I don't think somebody should be hired based upon the race, the religion, or whatever. I'm solely based upon merit. These DEI programs are not based upon merit. President Trump came out with a very strong statement as to if we want to make America great again and make Missouri great again, we need to make decisions based on merit, not based upon DEI.
Are you disappointed in the limited power the Lieutenant Governor's office actually has?
Right now, I'm drinking out of like I said, I had to get on Google Maps to find the state capitol. So we've got as much power as we want right now. I'm talking to 30 or 40 of the greatest journalists in the state of Missouri, so we're very pleased with the way the Lieutenant Governor's offices work. I think we're going to work well with Governor Kehoe and the other statewide officials. We're very pleased with the Lieutenant Governor's office. We're enjoying with presiding over the state senate. And I tell you, I'm always about people. And we took a slow, deliberate process in terms of hiring staff. Okay. In my mind, any organization, if you got the wrong people on the bus, it's not a good decision. We took a very slow, deliberate process in hiring. The folks you meet in this room that are with us today, we're very pleased with our team, you know, if I can hand this up, we just got a very good team, so we're pleased with the way things are going today. Yes, sir.
What's your feeling about the petition process, and do you see any legislation coming out on that this session?
So, another Republican failure was not getting initiative petition reform done. It should have been done years ago. A red flag is if you held up the Missouri Constitution next to the United States Constitution. The Missouri Constitution is about that thick. The U.S. Constitution is about that thick. And the reason the Missouri Constitution is that so thick is because the Missouri legislature never gets anything done. Okay, and that's Republicans and Democrats. So what happens is, you know, in my mind, these East Coast billionaires come in, mislead Missourians as much as they did with Amendment 3, end up funneling tens of millions of dollars into these initiative petition programs. You end up, you saw the ballot this last November. I mean, what were they? 7, 8, you know, constitutional amendments? And it's not right. I mean, this is not the way the state of Missouri should be governed, is through this initiative petition reform. And frankly, I lay these problems at the feet of the state legislature because they're not getting the job done, which is one of the other reasons I ran for Missouri Lieutenant Governor. What else? Any other questions?
All right.
Thank you very much. Again, you guys are great. Thank you very much.
Welcome to Justin.
All right, thank you. Please, we'd love to get your contact information. Thank you again.